The scent of betrayal is sharper than any perfume. For Isabella, it clung to the silk lapels of her husband's custom suits, a phantom fragrance amidst the aroma of wealth and success. He was Julian, the city's real estate king, and she was his adoring, pregnant wife. Their life was a fairy tale spun from gold and whispered promises. But a single anonymous message, a grainy photo of Julian's hand, his signet ring unmistakable, resting on a woman's thigh in a place he shouldn't have been, was the pinprick that threatened to unravel it all. What she did next wasn't just about revenge. It was a reckoning. Isabella Moretti lived a life most people only saw in magazines. Her home, a sprawling penthouse overlooking Central Park, was a testament to her husband Julian's Midas touch. Julian Moretti wasn't just in real estate. He conquered it. He sculpted the city's skyline, his name etched onto the most prestigious buildings. Their life was a meticulously curated collection of society balls, charity galas, and weekend trips to their estate in the Hamptons. Isabella, with her classical beauty and a grace that seemed innate, was the perfect complement to his ambition. She was the warm heart to his cool, calculated mind, the soft smile that disarmed his business rivals. Now, at 7 months pregnant with their first child, a son, she felt like the final perfect piece of their perfect life had clicked into place. But lately, a subtle disquiet had begun to ripple through the serene waters of her existence. It started with small things, inconsistencies easily explained away. The late-night board meetings that stretched into the early hours of the morning. The scent of an unfamiliar, cloyingly sweet perfume on his clothes when he finally came home, a scent he'd brush off as probably from someone at the office. The way his phone, once casually left on the nightstand, was now perpetually glued to his hand, its screen angled away from her. She had tried to ignore it. Trust was the bedrock of their marriage, she told herself. Julian was a busy man, a titan of industry. The pressures he faced were immense. She was his sanctuary, not his inquisitor. So she'd smile, rub her burgeoning belly, and ask about his day, pushing the tendrils of doubt back into the dark corners of her mind. Their friends, a close-knit circle of the city's elite, saw only the flawless facade. You two are the ultimate power couple. Her friend, Sophia, had sighed dreamily at a recent benefit watching Julian command the room with his easy charm. The way he looks at you, Isa, it's like you're the only person in the world. And he did look at her that way in public. His hand was always possessively on the small of her back, his eyes full of adoration. He would speak glowingly of his beautiful, brilliant wife and the son she was carrying his heir. It was a masterful performance, and for a long time Isabella had believed every word. The first real crack in the veneer appeared on a Tuesday. Julian had called to say he was stuck in a marathon negotiation with a Japanese consortium and wouldn't be home until after midnight. He sounded tired, stressed. Isabella had murmured her support, told him not to worry, and settled in for a quiet evening. Later that night, scrolling through Instagram, she saw a story posted by Marco, Julian's perpetually single playboy cousin. The video was a cacophony of loud music, flashing lights and champagne bottles. And in the background, for a fleeting second, she saw him. Julian. He wasn't in a stuffy boardroom. He was at a newly opened exclusive club, laughing a drink in his hand, his arm draped casually around the shoulders of a woman with fiery red hair. Isabella's heart hammered against her ribs. It had to be a mistake, a trick of the light. She replayed the video again and again, zooming in until the image became a pixelated mess. But there was no mistaking the sharp cut of his jaw, the glint of his ridiculously expensive watch. When he came home at 2 a.m., smelling faintly of whiskey, and that same sweet perfume. She confronted him. She kept her voice steady, her hands clasped tightly over her belly, as if to protect her son from the poison seeping into the air. "How was the meeting with the Japanese consortium?" she asked, her voice deceptively calm. Julian loosened his tie, his face a mask of exhaustion. "Brutal. They're tough negotiators. But I think we're close to a deal." Marco's Instagram story told a different story. She said, the words falling like ice chips into the silence. For the first time, she saw a flicker of panic in his eyes, quickly masked by annoyance. "Oh, for God's sake, Isa. I stopped by for one drink." "One?" Marco dragged me out. I was trying to decompress after a hellish day. "You can't possibly be jealous of my own cousin." He was so good at it. The way he twisted the narrative, making her feel unreasonable, clingy. He painted her concern as a symptom of pregnancy hormones, her intuition as insecurity. He kissed her forehead, his lips cool, and whispered, "You and this little guy are my whole world. You know that." She let him placate her. She let him lead her to bed and hold her, his breathing evening out into the steady rhythm of sleep, while she lay awake, staring into the darkness, the image of the redhead seared into her mind. The seeds of doubt had been planted, and now they were beginning to sprout. The anonymous message arrived a week later. It was a simple text from an unknown number, a single high-resolution photograph. No words, just the image. It depicted the interior of a lavish hotel room. In the foreground, a woman's manicured hand-nails, painted a deep crimson, rested possessively on a man's thigh. The man's hand was covering hers, and on his pinky finger, unmistakable, was the Moretti signet ring, a platinum band with a black onyx stone, an heirloom passed down through Julian's family for generations. He never took it off. Isabella's breath hitched. Her world, so carefully constructed, tilted on its axis. This was different from a blurry Instagram video. This was deliberate, malicious. Someone wanted her to see this. Her first instinct was to throw her phone against the wall, to shatter the screen and the sickening image it displayed. But a cold, unfamiliar calm washed over her. Tears wouldn't solve this. Hysteria wouldn't change the reality of that photograph. She saved the image, her fingers moving with a detached precision, and then deleted the message. For the next 48 hours, Isabella became a ghost in her own life. She moved through the motions, her smile a little too bright, her laughter a little too brittle. She went to her prenatal yoga class, had lunch with Sophia, and discussed nursery colors with her interior designer. All the while, her mind was a whirlwind of calculations and scenarios. She started to dig. Quietly, discreetly. She remembered the name of the club from Marco's video, Oblivion. A quick search revealed it was the city's newest, most exclusive hotspot, notoriously difficult to get into. Julian wasn't just decompressing. He was at the epicenter of the city's nightlife. The biggest clue, however, came from Julian himself. He announced he had to fly to Chicago for a 2-day business trip, an urgent matter concerning a new skyscraper project. He was apologetic, showering her with affection and promises to make it up to her. "I wish you could come with me," he'd said, stroking her cheek. "But the flight and the stress, it's not good for you or the baby right now." He packed his designer suitcase, and Isabella watched him, a hollow ache in her chest. She helped him choose his ties. Her touch lingering on the fine silk, the scent of his cologne filling her senses. It was a macabre pantomime of a loving marriage. The moment the door clicked shut behind him, Isabella sprang into action. She didn't call the airline to confirm his flight to Chicago. She didn't need to. Her gut, a primal instinct sharpened by pregnancy and betrayal, told her he wasn't going to Chicago. Instead, she made a different call. She hired a private investigator, a discreet professional recommended by her father, a shrewd lawyer who had always been wary of Julian's slick charm. She didn't tell her father why, only that she needed some due diligence on a business matter. The investigator, a former detective named Frank, was expensive and efficient. "I need to know where my husband Julian Moretti is staying for the next 2 nights," she told him, her voice firm. "He's supposed to be in Chicago. I suspect he is not." Frank was unfazed. "Do you have a recent photo?" "I have something better," Isabella replied. She sent him the anonymous picture. "His signet ring is unique, and I have a list of his recent credit card charges." Within hours, Frank called back. The credit card had been used not for a flight to Chicago, but for a 2-night booking at one of New York's most opulent and discreet hotels, the Baccarat Hotel. It was a palace of crystal and crimson, a haven for the ultra-wealthy seeking privacy and indulgence. It was also less than 20 blocks from their penthouse. "He checked in an hour ago," Frank reported, his voice devoid of emotion. "Booked the Prestige suite. He's not alone. A woman with red hair checked in with him." The words hit Isabella like a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. It was real, all of it. The lies, the perfume, the redhead. He wasn't just cheating. He was doing it in their city, flaunting his deceit, just a stone's throw from their home, from the nursery she was so lovingly preparing for their son. A strange clarity settled over her. The pain was immense, a white-hot agony that threatened to consume her. But beneath the pain, something else was crystallizing. A cold, hard resolve. She wasn't going to be the weeping, hysterical wife. She wouldn't be a victim in her own story. She thanked Frank and told him his services were no longer needed. She didn't need a private investigator to tell her what to do next. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her reflection seemed alien, a pale, drawn woman with haunted eyes, her pregnant belly a stark reminder of everything at stake. Slowly, deliberately, she began to get ready. She showered, letting the hot water sluice away the tremors of shock. She did her hair, styling it into a sleek, elegant chignon. She applied her makeup with a steady hand, choosing a bold red lipstick that was more war paint than cosmetic. Finally, she went to her closet. She bypassed the soft, flowing maternity dresses she usually wore. Instead, she chose a form-fitting black cashmere dress that hugged her curves, showcasing her pregnancy not as a vulnerability, but as a statement of power. She slipped on a pair of low, elegant heels and her favorite diamond earrings, a gift from Julian on their first anniversary. She wanted him to see what he was throwing away. She picked up her purse, her phone, and her keys. As she walked out of the penthouse, the city lights twinkling below like a carpet of fallen stars, she felt a profound shift within her. The heartbroken wife was gone. In her place was a woman on a mission. She wasn't going to the Baccarat to cry or to scream. She was going there to reclaim her life. And she had a plan. The lobby of the Baccarat Hotel was a symphony of opulence. Sunlight refracted through colossal crystal chandeliers, scattering rainbows across the polished marble floors. The air was thick with the scent of fresh flowers and expensive perfume. In another life, Isabella might have felt at home here. Tonight she felt like a predator stalking her prey. She walked across the lobby with a confidence she didn't feel, her head held high, her gaze fixed straight ahead. The concierge, a man in a perfectly tailored suit, gave her a polite, questioning look. Pregnant women in form-fitting black dresses walking into the Baccarat alone at 9 p.m. were not a common sight. I'm here to see my husband, Isabella said, her voice smooth as silk. Julian Moretti. He's in one of your prestige suites. Of course, madame, the concierge said, his professionalism unwavering. May I call up to the room to announce you? That won't be necessary, Isabella replied, a faint, cold smile playing on her lips. I want to surprise him. She produced a key card from her purse. It wasn't the key to the prestige suite, but a spare key to their own penthouse identical in its design. In the low ambient light, the concierge barely glanced at it. He simply saw the hotel's branding and her confident demeanor. Very well, madame. The prestige suites are on the 25th floor. I know, she said, already moving towards the elevators. The ride up was silent, the mirrored walls of the elevator reflecting 100 Isabellas, all of them looking back at her with the same steely resolve. Her heart was a frantic drum against her ribs, but her hands were steady. She rehearsed the plan in her mind, every step, every word. The hallway on the 25th floor was hushed and dimly lit. Plush carpets muffled her footsteps. She found the suite number Frank had given her, 2501. She could hear the faint sound of music from within. She didn't knock. Instead, she took a deep breath and swiped her own keycard. As she expected, it flashed red. Denied. This was part of the plan. She swiped it again. Red. She took out her phone and dialed the front desk. Hello, she said, her voice now laced with a carefully crafted note of distress. This is Isabella Moretti. I'm trying to get into my suite 2501, and my key isn't working. My husband, Julian, is inside, but he's a very deep sleeper. I'm afraid I'm locked out. My apologies, Mrs. Moretti. We'll send someone from security up with a master key immediately. Thank you, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I'm 7 months pregnant, and I'm feeling a little unwell. Please hurry. She hung up and leaned against the wall, her hand on her belly. The performance was flawless. Within 2 minutes, a burly security guard arrived, his face etched with concern. Mrs. Moretti. Let's get you inside. He used his master key. The light flashed green, and the lock clicked open. Thank you so much, Isabella breathed, offering him a grateful smile. I'll be fine now. The guard nodded and retreated down the hall. Isabella pushed the heavy door open and stepped inside. The suite was breathtaking. A wall of windows offered a panoramic view of the glittering Manhattan skyline. A half-empty bottle of champagne sat in a silver bucket, 2 glasses beside it. A woman's designer handbag was slung over a chair, and a pair of red-soled heels were kicked off haphazardly on the floor. And there they were, Julian and the redhead. They were on the plush velvet sofa, bathed in the soft glow of the city lights. They weren't in a passionate embrace. They were talking, their heads close together. The woman was crying, her shoulders shaking. Julian was holding her hand, the same hand from the photograph, and speaking to her in a low, soothing voice. They hadn't heard her enter. Isabella stood in the entryway, a silent, avenging angel cloaked in black. For a moment, the sight of them so intimate, so engrossed in each other, sent a fresh wave of agony through her. The plan. The resolve it all wavered. The primal urge to scream, to lash out, to shatter this tableau of betrayal was overwhelming. But then she saw the woman's face more clearly in the dim light. She was young, younger than Isabella, and her face, though beautiful, was streaked with tears and etched with a desperation that Isabella hadn't expected. Julian murmured something Isabella couldn't hear. The woman shook her head, pulling her hand away. No, Julian, I can't. It's too much. What about your wife? The sound of her own title, your wife, spoken by her husband's mistress, was the final galvanizing shock. It snapped everything back into focus. Isabella took a step forward, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor. "Yes, Julian," she said, her voice ringing out in the sudden silence, clear and cold as a winter morning. "What about your wife?" Julian's head whipped around. The color drained from his face. His eyes, wide with shock and guilt, looked as if he had seen a ghost. The redhead gasped, scrambling to her feet, trying to smooth down her silk blouse. "Isabella," Julian stammered, rising slowly. What are you doing here? I thought you were at home." "This isn't what it looks like," Isabella finished for him, a humorless laugh escaping her lips. "Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like. You in a 5-star hotel suite that you booked under a false pretense. A business trip to Chicago, I believe it was. And you—" she said, her gaze shifting to the redhead, her eyes sweeping over the woman with a cool, dismissive appraisal. "Must be the Japanese consortium." The woman flinched as if struck. "Please," she whispered, "you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Isabella said, taking another deliberate step into the room. "I understand that my husband is a liar and a cheat. And I understand that you are the woman he's lying and cheating with." "Isa, listen to me," Julian pleaded, taking a step towards her, his hands outstretched. "We need to talk. This is a complicated situation." "Stay where you are," Isabella commanded, her voice dropping to a dangerous low. He froze. She walked past them, her movements fluid and unhurried. She didn't look at them. Instead, her eyes scanned the room, taking in every detail. She walked to the window and looked out at the city. Their city. "It's a beautiful view," she said softly, almost to herself. "You always did have a taste for the dramatic, Julian." She turned back to face them. The shock on their faces was palpable. They had expected tears, screaming a dramatic scene. They had not expected this icy calm, this terrifying composure. "You know," Isabella continued, her voice conversational, "I've been thinking a lot about our life. This perfect life we've built. The penthouse, the parties, the dynasty." She placed a hand on her belly. "And I've realized something. It's all based on a lie." "That's not true," Julian insisted, his voice rising. "I love you. What happened here? It was a mistake. A terrible mistake." "A mistake?" Isabella repeated, her eyebrows raised. "Booking a suite for 2 nights is a mistake. Lying to your pregnant wife is a mistake. Or was the mistake getting caught?" She looked at the crying woman, who now seemed to be shrinking under her gaze. "And you? Do you love him? Is that your excuse? Or is it the money? The lifestyle? Did you think you could replace me? That you could be the next Mrs. Moretti?" Before the woman could answer, Isabella turned her back on them again and walked towards the door. Julian let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He thought she was leaving. He thought the worst was over. He was wrong. Isabella paused at the door. She didn't turn around. "You're right about one thing, Julian," she said, her voice echoing in the stunned silence. "This is a complicated situation, and it's about to get a lot more complicated." And then she did something that no one, not Julian, not the redhead, not even Isabella herself until that very moment, could have ever predicted. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Then she pulled out a small, high-tech device and pressed a button. A tiny red light on the device began to blink. With a final, chillingly calm statement, she said, "Everything from this point forward is on the record." She then opened the door, but didn't leave. Instead, she held it open, and two uniformed police officers who had been waiting silently in the hallway stepped into the room. Julian and his mistress stared, their faces a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. "Julian Moretti," Isabella said, her voice now devoid of all emotion. "I'd like to introduce you to Officer Miller and Officer Davis. They're here to take my statement. I'm filing a report. You see, I've just discovered that my husband has been using our joint assets to fund a rather expensive side project. And I have reason to believe this project involves fraud, embezzlement, and a number of other financial crimes. And I have all the proof I need right here." She held up her phone, the screen glowing. The anonymous photo was now the wallpaper. "You're bluffing," Julian snarled, his mask of contrition slipping to reveal a flash of his ruthless business persona. "You have nothing." "Don't I?" Isabella replied, her smile razor-sharp. She turned to the officers. "Gentlemen, my husband has been making a series of unauthorized multi-million-dollar transfers from our joint accounts to a shell corporation. A corporation I've just discovered that is registered to this young lady right here." She gestured towards the redhead, who looked as if she was about to faint. "Her name," Isabella said, the final word landing with the force of a guillotine, "is Chloe Vance, and I believe she and my husband have been defrauding me and his company for a very, very long time." The room fell silent, the only sound the distant wail of a city siren. Isabella hadn't come for a confrontation. She had come for a detonation, and she had just lit the fuse. The real drama, she knew, was only just beginning. The immediate aftermath was a chaotic tableau of disbelief. Julian, for the first time in his life, was rendered speechless. His face, usually a canvas of confident charm, was a contorted mask of fury and panic. Chloe Vance, the redhead, simply crumpled onto the expensive rug, sobbing hysterically. The police officers Miller and Davis were the picture of professional calm, though their eyes betrayed a flicker of surprise. This was not their usual domestic dispute call. "Ma'am," Officer Miller began addressing Isabella. "Embezzlement and fraud are serious allegations. We'll need to take a formal statement downtown." "Of course," Isabella said smoothly. "I have my lawyer meeting me there. I also have a full dossier of financial records, bank statements, and wire transfers prepared. I believe you'll find it very illuminating." She glanced at Julian, a sliver of ice in her gaze. "My husband is very meticulous. He leaves a very clear paper trail." Julian finally found his voice, a low, dangerous growl. "Isabella, you have no idea what you're doing. You're destroying everything. Our family. Our future." "Our future," she retorted, her voice dripping with scorn. "You destroyed our future the moment you decided to build a second one in this hotel room. As for our family," she placed a protective hand over her belly, "I'm protecting it. I'm protecting our son from a world built on your lies." She turned to the sobbing Chloe. "And you? You might want to call a lawyer. I imagine you'll be needing one." With that, Isabella turned and walked out of the suite, leaving behind the wreckage of her marriage. She didn't look back. As she rode the crystal elevator down, her reflection in the mirrored walls seemed different again. The avenging angel was gone. In her place was a queen who had just checkmated the king. The next few hours were a blur of fluorescent lights and legal jargon at the police station. Her father's lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Albright, was already there, having been briefed by Isabella in a frantic whispered phone call just before she'd left the penthouse. Ms. Albright reviewed the file Isabella had painstakingly compiled over the last 48 hours. It was more than just a suspicion. Using a backdoor login to their shared financial portal, a detail Julian had arrogantly assumed she would never understand, Isabella had traced a pattern of systematic withdrawals. Millions of dollars siphoned from a joint investment account into a shell corporation named CV Enterprises. CV. Chloe Vance. It was almost insultingly simple. This is comprehensive. Ms. Albright said, her expression a mixture of impressed and appalled. He got sloppy arrogant. He used your joint funds, which makes it a clear case of fraudulent conversion. We can freeze his assets, and by extension, hers, pending the investigation. The wheels of justice, lubricated by the Moretti name and the sheer scale of the alleged fraud, began to turn with surprising speed. By dawn, a court order had been issued. Julian Moretti's personal and a significant portion of his business accounts were frozen. News travels fast in the upper echelons of New York society. By the time the sun rose over the city, the whispers had begun. Julian Moretti, the real estate titan, was under investigation. Isabella returned to the penthouse as the sky was turning from indigo to pale grey. The apartment felt vast and empty. The scent of Julian's cologne still lingered in the air, a ghostly presence. She walked into the nursery, the soft blues and creams, a stark contrast to the ugliness of the night. She sank into the rocking chair, her body finally succumbing to the exhaustion. She hadn't just exposed an affair. She had declared war. She knew Julian. He wouldn't go down without a fight. He would use every weapon in his arsenal, his money, his power, his influence, to crush her. He would paint her as a vindictive, hormonal, scorned wife. But as she sat there in the quiet sanctuary she had created for her son, a new unsettling thought began to creep in. Julian was a brilliant, ruthless businessman. But he was also obsessively protective of his public image and his company. The way he had funneled the money was clumsy, almost amateurish. For a man who navigated billion-dollar deals with surgical precision, creating a shell corporation with his mistress's initials was laughably transparent. Why was it just arrogance? Did he underestimate her that completely? Or was there something else? Something more complex than a simple sordid affair funded by marital assets? Her phone buzzed, startling her. It was an unknown number, the same one from the original anonymous message. Her heart pounded. She hesitated, then answered her voice, a hoarse whisper. "Hello." The voice on the other end was distorted, electronically disguised, but clearly male. "You did it," the voice said. "You actually did it." "Who is this?" Isabella demanded, sitting bolt upright. "A friend," the voice replied. "Someone who believes Julian Moretti needs to be stopped. But you've only scratched the surface, Isabella. The affair, the money he stole from you, that's pocket change. It's a symptom of a much deeper disease." "What are you talking about?" "The Chicago project," the voice said, and a chill snaked down Isabella's spine. "There is no skyscraper. There is no deal. Ask Julian about Project Nightingale. Ask him what really happened to his former partner, David Chen." David Chen. Isabella remembered him. A brilliant architect, Julian's partner in their first major development. They had a falling out years ago. Julian had said David had become unstable, unreliable, and that they had parted ways amicably. David had faded from the society pages, and no one ever questioned it. What about David Chen? Isabella whispered. David Chen knew about Project Nightingale, and he objected, vehemently. Now he's gone. Vanished, the voice said. The money Julian stole from you wasn't for his mistress, Isabella. It was panic money. He's in much deeper trouble than you can possibly imagine. Chloe Vance isn't his lover. She's his leverage. The line went dead. Isabella stared at her phone, her mind reeling. The neat narrative of betrayal and revenge she had constructed had just been shattered. This wasn't just about a cheating husband. She had stumbled into something far more sinister. The affair, the hotel room, the stolen money, it was all a smokescreen. She had thought she was the queen, checkmating the king. But she had just discovered she was a pawn in a much larger, deadlier game. And the real players were only just beginning to reveal themselves. The name Project Nightingale echoed in the silence of the penthouse, a dissonant chord in the symphony of Isabella's new reality. David Chen. Chloe Vance, his leverage. The disjointed pieces of the puzzle floated in her mind, refusing to form a coherent picture. The mysterious caller had reframed everything. She had acted out of personal betrayal, but it seemed she had inadvertently detonated a bomb with a much wider blast radius. Her first call was not to her lawyer, but back to Frank, the private investigator. She needed information, not legal advice. Frank, it's Isabella Moretti, she said, her voice low and urgent. I need you to find everything you can on two people. David Chen, an architect and former partner of my husband, and Chloe Vance. I need to know everything. Her background, her family, her financials, who she talks to, everything. And I need you to be invisible. This goes beyond the scope of a standard marital infidelity case, Mrs. Moretti. Frank said, his voice cautious. I'm well aware of that. Frank, Isabella replied, a new hardness in her tone. So will your payment. I'll wire you a retainer. Just find me what I need. While Frank began his digital excavation, Isabella started her own. She turned her pain and anger into fuel for a meticulous, focused investigation. She was no longer just a scorned wife. She was a woman fighting for her son's future, a future that she now realized was entangled in a web of criminality she couldn't yet comprehend. She started with Julian's home office. It was a space she rarely entered, a sanctuary of leather mahogany and ambition. Julian, in his arrogance, had never thought to change the security codes. With trembling fingers, she accessed his desktop computer. For hours she sifted through files, her mind sharp, her focus absolute. Most were legitimate business documents, blueprints and contracts for his myriad real estate projects. But she wasn't looking for the legitimate. She was looking for the hidden, the encrypted, the mislabeled. She found it in a deeply buried subfolder labeled Personal Hobbies. Inside there was a single password-protected file named Nightingale. Her heart hammered. This was it. She tried all the usual passwords, her birthday, their anniversary, his mother's name, the name of his first dog. Nothing. Then a thought struck her. Julian was a narcissist, but a sentimental one in his own way. She typed in the name of the small, obscure vineyard in Tuscany where he had proposed to her. The file opened. It wasn't a document. It was a ledger, a meticulously detailed record of payments, bribes, and kickbacks. The Chicago project was a ghost, a shell used to launder money. The ledger detailed payoffs to city officials, zoning board members, and union leaders, all related to his most recent, most celebrated development, the Olympus Tower. It was his crown jewel, the building that had cemented his legacy. And according to this ledger, it was built on a foundation of corruption. The names on the list were some of the most powerful people in the city. The amounts were staggering. And then she saw the payments to CV Enterprises. They weren't the romantic slush fund of an affair. They were structured, regular payments categorized under consulting and risk assessment. And then she found the entries related to David Chen. There were a series of increasingly large payments to a private security firm known for its ruthless, off-the-books tactics. The final entry, dated almost 2 years ago, was a single massive payment to the same firm with a chillingly simple memo: Final resolution, DC issue. Isabella felt sick. Final resolution. It was a corporate euphemism for something unspeakable. David Chen hadn't just vanished. He had been erased. At that moment, her phone rang. It was Frank. "I have something on Chloe Vance," he said, his voice grim. "She's not who you think she is. She graduated top of her class from MIT with a degree in computer science and cryptography. Worked for a cybersecurity firm for 2 years before quitting to become an independent consultant. But here's the kicker. Her father, Michael Vance, is a senior compliance officer at the SEC. Isabella's blood ran cold. The Securities and Exchange Commission. "And David Chen," she whispered. "That's a ghost story," Frank said. "The man dropped off the face of the earth 2 years ago. No credit card activity, no travel, no digital footprint. But I dug into his old files, his emails, before he disappeared. He was communicating with someone at the SEC, an anonymous whistleblower. He was about to expose massive bribery and money laundering in a huge New York real estate project." The pieces slammed into place with a dizzying, sickening force. Chloe Vance wasn't Julian's mistress. She was his blackmailer. Or worse. She was the daughter of an SEC officer, a cryptography expert. She had likely discovered the corruption surrounding the Olympus Tower, perhaps through her father, or through her own skills. She had Julian cornered. The payments to her consulting firm weren't for her silence about an affair. They were for her silence about a criminal enterprise that could send Julian and half of the city's elite to prison for the rest of their lives. The affair, the hotel room, it was a performance, a charade. But for whose benefit? And then the most terrifying realization of all dawned on Isabella. Chloe had been crying in that hotel room. She had looked desperate, trapped. "I can't. It's too much," she had said. She wasn't an ice-cold blackmailer in control of the situation. She was a pawn, just like Isabella. But if Chloe was a pawn, who was the player Julian? He had orchestrated the entire scene. He had known somehow that Isabella was suspicious. He had lured her to the baccarat. He wanted her to find them. He wanted her to react, to call the police, to file a report. But he wanted her to report the wrong crime. He had presented her with a simple, believable story of infidelity and embezzlement, a messy public but ultimately containable domestic dispute. It was a brilliant, cynical misdirection. By focusing the legal and media attention on his affair with Chloe and the money he stole from their joint account, he was creating a smokescreen to hide the far greater crimes of Project Nightingale. He was sacrificing his marriage to save his empire. He was using his pregnant wife's pain as a shield. And Chloe, she was the designated scapegoat. Julian would likely claim she was the mastermind, an obsessive former employee who had embezzled the money and was blackmailing him. With her father at the SEC, it created a conflict of interest that would mire any investigation in red tape for years. By the time anyone figured out the truth, he would have hidden the real evidence and covered his tracks. Isabella felt a wave of nausea. She wasn't just fighting a cheating husband. She was fighting a master manipulator, a man so ruthless he would frame his own wife and his accomplice to save himself. She looked at the ledger on the screen, at the names, the dates, the cold, hard numbers that represented a vast criminal conspiracy. She had the truth in her hands. But who would believe her? Julian would paint her as a woman scorned, lashing out with wild, unsubstantiated accusations. No, she couldn't go to the police with this. Not yet. They were already pursuing the embezzlement charge, the narrative Julian wanted them to pursue. She needed a different kind of weapon. She needed to dismantle his empire from the inside out. She saved a copy of the Nightingale ledger to a highly encrypted thumb drive. She then permanently erased the original file from Julian's computer using a secure deletion program to wipe it clean. Let him think his secret was still safe. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. "He's smarter than you think. The Baccarat was a stage. You were the lead actress in a play he wrote. Be careful. You're not the only one he's underestimated." The message confirmed her terrifying conclusion. Her mysterious friend knew Julian's game. Isabella stood up, the cold resolve returning stronger than ever. Julian had intended for her to be a pawn. He had miscalculated. He had forgotten who she was. She was not just Isabella Moretti, the society wife. She was the daughter of a brilliant lawyer, a woman with intelligence, resources, and a will of iron. He had built an empire of glass and steel on a foundation of lies. She would be the architect of its ruin. And she would do it not with a wrecking ball, but with a surgeon's scalpel. She would take everything from him. His money, his power, his freedom, his legacy. She would leave him with nothing but the rubble of the life he had so casually destroyed. Her phone rang one more time. This time it was an unsaved number, but the caller ID showed a name. Chloe Vance. Isabella stared at the screen, her heart pounding. The pawn was calling the queen. She took a deep breath and answered the call. The next move in the game had just begun. "Don't hang up." Chloe Vance's voice was a frantic whisper, stripped of the feigned confidence Isabella had seen in the hotel suite. "Please, we need to talk. Not on the phone. Meet me." Isabella was silent for a moment, her mind racing. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, another move in Julian's elaborate game. But the raw fear in Chloe's voice sounded genuine. "Where?" Isabella asked, her tone flat and devoid of warmth. "Do you know the Jefferson Market Garden in Greenwich Village? It's public open. In an hour. Please. I can explain everything. He'll kill me, Isabella. I think he'll actually kill me." The last words were choked out in a sob before the line went dead. Isabella stood frozen. "He'll kill me." The words echoed the chilling memo from the Nightingale ledger. Final resolution. DC issue. Julian wasn't just a white-collar criminal. He was dangerous. This changed the stakes entirely. Her plan for a slow, meticulous dismantling of his empire felt inadequate in the face of such a direct threat. She looked at the encrypted thumb drive in her hand. This was her leverage, her weapon. But a weapon was useless if the enemy struck first. She agreed to the meeting. But she wouldn't go alone. She called Frank. "Change of plans. I need you with me. Jefferson Market Garden. 1 hour. Be my shadow. If anything looks wrong, you call the number I'm about to give you. It's a direct line to a friend of my father's at the U.S. Attorney's Office. Tell him to execute the Isabella contingency." She had no such contingency, but Frank didn't need to know that. He just needed to understand the gravity of the situation. The Jefferson Market Garden was a small oasis of green nestled among the brownstones of the village. Isabella chose a bench in a secluded corner, her back to a brick wall, giving her a clear view of the entrance. She wore oversized sunglasses, and a simple saw of her pregnant belly the only recognizable feature. A few minutes later, she saw Chloe slip through the gate. Chloe looked nothing like the glamorous woman from the baccarat. She was pale and drawn, wearing a simple hoodie and jeans. Her fiery red hair was scraped back into a messy ponytail. She scanned the garden nervously, her eyes wide with fear, before spotting Isabella. She approached cautiously and sat on the opposite end of the bench, as if afraid to get too close. "Thank you for coming," Chloe whispered, wringing her hands. "I'm not here to make friends," Isabella said coldly. "You have 5 minutes to convince me that you aren't a part of my husband's plan to ruin my life." Tears welled in Chloe's eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. "I am part of his plan, but not in the way you think. I never slept with him, Isabella. Not once. The whole thing, the affair, it was a fabrication, his fabrication." "I've already figured that much out," Isabella said, her words sharp. "I know about Project Nightingale. I know about the Olympus Tower. And I know what happened to David Chen." The color drained completely from Chloe's face. She looked utterly terrified. How do you know that my husband isn't the only one who underestimates me?" Isabella replied. "Now start talking. Why you—" Chloe took a shaky breath. "My father. He's a compliance officer at the SEC. A few years ago, he was assigned to a preliminary inquiry into Julian's company. It was anonymous, based on a tip. My father is meticulous, a good man. He found irregularities that pointed to massive bribery. But he had no hard proof. The inquiry stalled." She continued the words, tumbling out in a rush. "I made a mistake. I was arrogant. I was working in cybersecurity, and I thought I could help. I used my skills to breach Moretti Enterprises' servers from the outside. I was looking for the proof my father needed. And I found it. I found everything. Project Nightingale, the ledger, the bribes, the cover-up of David Chen's disappearance." "So you decided to blackmail him?" Isabella asked, a note of contempt in her voice. "No," Chloe insisted, her voice cracking. "I never wanted his money. I was going to turn the evidence over to my father. But he found me. I don't know how. He's always one step ahead. One night he was just there, waiting for me in my apartment. He didn't threaten me, not directly. He was charming. He told me he admired my skills. He said he was impressed." She shuddered at the memory. "He showed me pictures of my father, my mother, my younger sister at college. He knew their routines, their schedules. He never said a word, but the message was clear. If I went to the authorities, my family would pay the price." The cold, calculated cruelty of it was pure Julian. Isabella felt a flicker of something she didn't expect: empathy. "He forced me to work for him," Chloe continued, her voice trembling. "He said he needed my skills to secure his operations. He created CV Enterprises and started funneling money into it. He said it was for my services, but I knew it was to implicate me, to bind me to him. If he went down, I would go down with him. And my father's career would be destroyed by the scandal of his own daughter being involved." "And the scene at the baccarat," Isabella prompted. "That was his master stroke," Chloe said bitterly. "He told me a few days ago that there was a new problem. His wife. You. He said you were getting suspicious. He laid out the whole plan. We were to stage a fake affair. He would steal money from your joint account and put it in my company's name. He said you were emotional predictable, that you would find us, and in a fit of jealous rage, you'd report him for the affair and for stealing from you. A domestic crime. She looked Isabella directly in the eye. It was all to control the narrative, to give the police and the press a simple, juicy story to chase so they would never look for the real one. He was going to sacrifice his marriage to bury a mass conspiracy. He was going to let me take the fall as the manipulative mistress who drove him to it. He told me if I played my part convincingly, he would let my family go. Isabella processed the information, her mind connecting it to what she already knew. It was a perfect, horrifyingly elegant plan, and it almost worked. "Why are you telling me this now?" Isabella asked, her voice still cautious. "What's changed? Yesterday?" Chloe whispered, her eyes darting around the garden nervously. "After the police came, he called me. He wasn't charming anymore. He was furious. He said, you didn't play your part right. She was too calm, too prepared. She knows something. He said I had become a loose end, just like David Chen." The terror in Chloe's eyes was primal. "He's going to clean house, Isabella. He's going to get rid of me. And then I don't know what he'll do to you. You're the only other person who can expose him. He won't let you have that baby. He won't let his dynasty be born from a woman who defied him." A wave of protective fury washed over Isabella, so fierce it almost made her dizzy. The threat was no longer just to her, but to her unborn child. She made a decision. It was risky, reckless even, but it was the only path she saw. "You said you breached his servers," Isabella said, her voice now sharp and commanding. "That means you can get back in." Chloe looked confused. Probably. His internal security is good, but I built some of the back doors myself." "Good," Isabella said, a plan forming with lightning speed. "Julian thinks he's controlling the narrative. We're going to change it. He wants a media scandal. We'll give him one, but not the one he's expecting." She leaned forward, her voice a low, conspiratorial whisper. "He thinks his Nightingale ledger is safe. I've erased his copy, but I have one." She patted her purse where the thumb drive was safely tucked away. "You're a cryptography expert. I need you to leak it, not to the police, not to the SEC, to the press." Chloe stared at her aghast. "The press? They'll tear me apart." "My name is on those transactions." "They will," Isabella agreed. "At first. But you're going to leak it along with a signed, sworn affidavit. You will confess to everything, to hacking his company, to the blackmail, to the creation of CV Enterprise. You will frame yourself as the villain of the story, a brilliant but greedy hacker who got in over her head. But you will also provide them with the unredacted ledger, every name, every bribe." "Why would I do that?" Chloe choked out. "I'd be confessing to multiple felonies because," Isabella said, her gaze intense, "it's the only way to make them believe the ledger is real. It's too big, too explosive. If it comes from an anonymous source, they'll dismiss it as a fabrication. But if it comes from a named source who is confessing her own role in the crime, an insider, they'll have to investigate, and you'll have an immunity deal." "An immunity deal?" "My lawyer is one of the best in the city," Isabella explained. "You will walk into the U.S. Attorney's office tomorrow morning with her. You will present yourself as a cooperating witness. You'll give them everything they need to convict not just Julian, but every corrupt official on that list. In exchange for your full cooperation, you'll get transactional immunity. You'll walk away a free woman." It was a breathtakingly audacious plan. To fight Julian's fire, Isabella was prepared to start an inferno. She was offering Chloe a way out, but it required the younger woman to walk through fire first. Chloe was silent for a long time, her face a turmoil of fear and indecision. She looked at Isabella, at this pregnant woman, who had every reason to hate her, who was now offering her a lifeline. "Why are you helping me?" Chloe finally whispered. "Because my husband is a monster who preys on the vulnerable," Isabella said, her voice cold as steel. "He tried to use you, and he tried to use me. And because I have no intention of letting my son be born into a world where Julian Moretti holds any power whatsoever, we are going to burn his kingdom to the ground and salt the earth behind us." In the quiet green of the garden, amidst the blooming flowers, an unholy alliance was forged. The wife and the scapegoat, the queen and the pawn. Together they were about to unleash a storm that would bring the city's most powerful man to his knees. The next 24 hours would change everything. The story of Isabella Moretti isn't just a tale of revenge. It's a testament to the underestimated power of a woman pushed to the edge. It's a reminder that beneath a surface of grace and elegance can lie a will of iron and a brilliant strategic mind. She took her pain and forged it not into a weapon of blind rage, but into a key that unlocked a conspiracy, saved a life, and exposed the rot hiding beneath the city's gilded facade. Her actions shocked everyone, not because they were destructive, but because they were masterful. She didn't just tear down her husband's house of cards. She reshuffled the entire deck. If you were captivated by Isabella's fight for justice and the intricate web of deceit she unraveled, please let us know in the comments below. What would you have done in her position? Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed the story. Share it with someone who loves a good drama, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more tales of shocking twists and ultimate triumph. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to you every week.